September 1976. An F-4 fighter jet locks radar onto an object over Tehran and loses every instrument on board the instant it gets close. One line in this file we promise you nobody in Washington has ever explained. The archive is open. Tonight, a DIA cable out of Tehran and the routing paperwork that tried to bury it. Two versions of the same night, both stamped, both scarred by the censor's pen. Start with the cover sheet. Before we even get to the sighting, someone in Washington had to decide who was allowed to know about it.
Routing and transmittal slip. 2. Name, office symbol, room number, building, agency, post. 1. Remarks per telecom.
Per telecon. 2 words. No name, no record of who called who. Whatever that redacted name was, it cost somebody plausible deniability for free. A few pages in, the evaluation form gets stranger. There's a line about the reason for the whole review, and it isn't routine.
Reason for evaluation. 3. Selected by Cole NGR. Special request. Analyst initiative.
Not a user complaint, not a routine collector's request. Somebody with a colonel's rank flagged this one personally. Page 4 shows where it landed. A Joint Chiefs Message Center routing sheet CC'd to the White House, SecDef, and NSA Washington. That's not a weather balloon distribution list. That's the paperwork. Page 4 is the message itself, the actual cable out of Tehran, time-stamped and stamped RE cod. This is where the F-4 enters the story.
P23063002 SEP 76 FM USDAO Tehran 2 Ruek JHS Dia Wash DC Sub J 2 Reported UFO sighting U. This report forwards information concerning the sighting of an UFO in Iran on 19 September 1976. At about 12:30 HRS on 19 September 76, the Imperial Iranian Air Force, IUAF, command post received 4 telephone calls from citizens living in the SHEMIRAN area of Tehran, saying that they had seen strange objects in the sky. At 01:30 HRS on the 19th, the F-4 took off and proceeded to a point about 40 enans north of Tehran. Due to its brilliance, the object was easily visible from 70 miles away.
The cable doesn't stop at brilliant object. Page 3 of the message picks up mid-encounter, after the instruments died, after the pilot dove to break contact. What happens next is the part nobody at the Pentagon wanted briefed upstairs.
Remained with his weapons control panel went off and he lost all communications, UHF and interphone. At this point, the pilot initiated a turn and negative G dive to get away. The object turned, the object fell in trail at what appeared to be about 3.4 nms. As he continued in his turn away from the primary object, the second object went to the inside of his turn, then returned to the primary object for a perfect rejoin. Shortly after the second object joined up with the primary object, another object appeared to come out of the other side of the primary object, going straight down at a great rate of speed. The F-4 crew had regained communications and the weapons control panel and watched the object approach the ground, anticipating a large explosion. This object appeared to come to rest gently on the earth and cast a very bright light over an area of about 2 to 3 kilometers. Reason for evaluation. 3. Selected by Colin Gear. Necessity for a valid study of a UFO phenomenon.
Necessity for a valid study of a UFO phenomenon. That phrase is sitting inside a Defense Intelligence Agency evaluation form, not a tabloid, a form with checkboxes for reliability and value. We'll come back to what happens to that necessity later. The crew marked the position, then command followed through on the ground threat, checking for fallout, not folklore. Page 7 confirms the next step and names exactly who this story came from.
Fighter intercepting. The aircraft and area where the object is believed to have landed are being checked for possible radiation. No comment. Information contained in this report was obtained from source in conversation with a subsource and I-2AF pilot of one of the F-84s. More information will be forwarded when it becomes available.
A radiation check, a subsource, a pilot's own account, second-hand but on record, and a promise of more to come. filed, stamped, and left in a folder for 2 years before anyone outside the chain saw it. Note the distribution list: Secretary of Defense, the State Department, the White House. This wasn't staying inside one command's filing cabinet. Now the message itself. Midnight, SHEMIRAN District, Tehran. 4 separate phone calls to a military command post, and nobody in the sky to explain them. No helicopters airborne. The duty officer looked for himself, decided it wasn't stars, and scrambled an F-4 out of Cherokee Air Base. That's when this stops being a phone complaint. A secondary object breaking off, descending, landing gently, throwing light over 2 to 3 kilometers of ground. That's not a malfunction. That's a position report. And the crew marked the spot. 40 nautical miles out. That's how far the first jet had to fly before the object even reacted to it. Then, everything on board the aircraft just stopped.
As the F-4 approached a range of 25 minutes, he lost all instrumentation and communications, UMF and intercom. He broke off the interception and headed back to Cherokee. When the F-4 turned away from the object and apparently was no longer a threat to it, the aircraft regained all instrumentation and communications.
Read that twice. The systems came back the moment the jet stopped being a threat. Not randomly, conditionally. A second F-4 went up anyway and got a radar lock at 27 miles. Follow the paper trail far enough and you find the men behind the redactions, December 8, 1978. A routing slip, marked draft, from a DIA analyst named Louis Foster, buried at the bottom of the same file.
Routing and transmittal slip, Data 8, Dec 78. Remarks, per telecon. From, name, org, symbol, agency, post. Room number, BLDG. Louis E. Foster, RDS 3A, DIA. Phone number, declassified by authority. Is subject to general declassification, schedule of executive order 1M652.
Per telecon. A phone call, unrecorded, that started this whole chain of custody. No transcript, no name on the other end, just a form, stamped and sent down the line. White House, not a footnote, an addressee. Whatever happened over Azadi Shar, it didn't stay a local matter for long. A perfect rejoin, military language for something that flew like it was piloted, and something else that fell like a controlled landing, not a crash. The crew braced for an explosion and got a soft light on the ground instead. A DIA case officer, a phone call logged as peer telecon, and a declassification date with the year itself blacked out. Someone at Defense Intelligence wanted this on paper and wanted control over exactly when the rest of us could read it. This isn't some retrieved case file from a dusty cabinet. It came out through a Freedom of Information push, and the cover sheet says so, plainly, before you even reach the redactions.
This file is made available through the declassification efforts and research of the Black Vault. The Black Vault is the largest online Freedom of Information Act, government record clearinghouse in the world.
No agency seal, no classification stamp, just a private citizen's website doing the government's transparency work for it. That's not a footnote. That's the whole reason you're watching this footage tonight. And once you get past that cover page, the trail leads straight to the Pentagon's own message center, routed to DIA, state, NSA, even the White House. Whatever happened in that garden, it didn't stay local for long. But strip away the landing, the beeper, the garden, and look at how this whole thing started, not with a scramble alert, with 4 phone calls from ordinary citizens who just happened to look up.
At about 12:30 HRs on 19 Sep 76, the Imperial Iranian Air Force, IOAF command post received 4 telephone calls from citizens living in the SHEMIRAN area of Tehran, saying that they had seen strange objects in the sky. Some reported a kind of bird-like object, while others reported a helicopter with a light on. There were no helicopters airborne at that time. The command post called BC Youssef 1, Assistant Deputy Commander of Operations. After he told the citizen it was only stars, and he looked at Mehrabad Tower, he decided to look for himself. He noticed an object in the sky similar to a star, bigger and brighter. He decided to scramble an F-4 from Cherokee AFB to investigate.
A duty officer brushes it off as stars, checks anyway, and changes his mind fast enough to scramble a fighter. That's the moment this stopped being a rumor and became a case file. Page 4, Line 1, distributed to DIA, State, NSA, and the White House before the jet even landed. Came to rest gently. Not crashed, landed. The crew marks the spot, has trouble on final approach because their instruments keep dying at one specific compass bearing, and somehow a civilian airliner in the same patch of sky loses its radios too. Daylight comes. A helicopter takes the crew back to the landing site and finds nothing where they expected it. Then a signal leads them somewhere they didn't expect at all.
Nothing was noticed at the spot where they thought the object landed but as they circled off to the west of the area, they picked up a very noticeable beeper signal. At the point where the return was, the lodged in a small house with a garden. They landed and asked the people within if they had noticed anything strange last night. The people talked about a loud noise and a very bright light.
A family in a garden describing a loud noise and a bright light to a military helicopter crew that showed up unannounced the next morning. That's where the eyewitness trail ends. The file closes with a checked box, not an answer. More information will be forwarded when it becomes available. That's the last line of the report. As far as the public record shows, it never was. Whatever that first redacted source's name was, it stayed a name only the DIA got to know. 20 years later, a researcher named John Greenwald files a FOIA request. The DIA searches its own records and finds exactly one document, the same night, still redacted around the edges.
Therein you requested records concerning the sighting of an unidentified flying object in Iran on 19 September 1976. A search of DIA's systems of records located one document responsive to the subject of your request. Enclosed for your use is the document with only administrative markings withheld.
There's a routing header on this file that never makes it into the summaries, page 3 of the transmission, the distribution list for who got read in on this thing within hours.
Dister CJCS01, DJS03, J34, JSOR, NNCC SCXDF07, DPSDF, CIA, NSA WASH, DC, White House WASH, DC.
Joint Chiefs, CIA, NSA, the White House. Not a footnote distribution, a same-night distribution. Whatever happened over Tehran that morning, it didn't stay a local matter for more than a few hours. Only administrative markings withheld, meaning the agency's own position, on paper, is that everything else you just heard was always fair to release. It sat classified anyway for 20 years. Every file we read tonight is linked below. Don't take our word for it. Read them yourself. And if you want the next file on your desk, subscribe. New files every Tuesday and Friday.